Right then, everyone has already given their instant reaction to Jim Ratcliffe's interview with Gary Neville. I wanted to sit back though, and I wanted to let the dust settle, and I wanted to have a read at what some people thought. I wanted to properly digest what the interview meant myself. I don't just want to go off quotes. I want to try and figure it out, how it's all gone off, and see what actually matters from the interview. Now, what I will say is my immediate reaction, and what he didn't say was just how much trouble Manchester United is really in. From obviously the financial ruin to the obvious disasters of transfers to admitting that they probably should have sacked Ten Hag. I thought the interview really exposed some realities in a way that we've never heard before. And honestly, I think Ratcliffe is either going to be the man that saves the club, or we are looking at another decade of excuses, and he will be at the helm when we absolutely cave in. So let's get into the main talking points then. So is United bigger than he expected? Is he in over his head? Right off the bat, he says he underestimated the scale of the club. He said the club is bigger than you think, and the scrutiny is bigger than you anticipate. He goes, you get your school reports at the end of the day instead of end of every term. Now, I'm a little bit surprised at this for someone of his age that supported United for so long. Didn't anticipate the scrutiny that he would be under. I'm quite shocked by that, actually. I think that went under the radar for a lot of people, but I'm really surprised he's surprised. That makes me wonder, has he been overwhelmed with the pressure? You know, he's talking about a lot of people coming up to him, you know, crossing the border from Mongolia into China. You know, a lot of people coming up to him to talk about the club and the size of the club. But has the pressure of running that, obviously compared to Lausanne and Nice, getting to him, perhaps? Then he drops a massive bombshell. United on the brink of going bust. United want to run out of money by Christmas if it wasn't for the money that they put in. Now, there's a lot of people in the comments that are going to immediately start talking about him keeping the Glazers here. The problem is, technically that's true, right? Technically, he invested money into the club. Did he do it to keep the Glazers here, though? You know, you're looking at the cause and the correlation and saying that they're the same thing. And what was the intent? I am absolutely certain, following this interview, that Jim Ratcliffe's ambition is to be the sole owner of Manchester United, or Ineos to be the sole owner of Manchester United. Now, the one thing that people really misunderstand about contracts and law and investments and this, that, and the other, there will be non-disparity clauses within these. I've had to sign them, right? When you work with people, there are non-disparity clauses. And what does that mean? It means you can't fucking talk shit, right? So there will be a clause that Jim Ratcliffe can't talk shit about the Glazers. So when you're watching the interview, and to be fair, I thought Gary Neville came across really well. And he did ask the hard questions. And when he was batted away, he didn't go away. He came back and he was like, no. We need the answer to this. I thought Gary did a real good job of the questions that he asked, actually. And he kept going on at him. Now, obviously, there's certain things. It's weird because in my head, I'm thinking, Gary's been part of this task force. Gary must know more than he's letting on that he knows in the middle of this interview. But whatever. He obviously can't come out and slag the Glazers off. And I know that's what a lot of people want him to do. We all want him to come and do that. He's never going to do that. He's not legally allowed to do that. I think if you're reading between the lines, though, he's saying, this isn't me. This is me. And he kept reiterating, we will get back to that. We will get back to that. We will have a stadium that is fit for the biggest club in the world, and we will be back winning trophies. But anyway, let's get back into the rest of the quotes. He speaks about the mismanagement on every level. He talks, and I think, again, you've got to read between the lines of what he did say and what he didn't say. When he talks about Sir Alex and David Gill leaving, you can see this complimentary stuff there. And then he's like, and that's kind of when it went tits up. Even when Gary was trying to put it on him about the owners, I felt like he was kind of indirecting fuck out of Woodward with it. And, you know, he spoke about why won't the Glazers put the money back in? Why won't they do it? And obviously he dodged it. You know, I think that, as I said in the Fixing United video, the biggest thing you've got to fix is the debt. He's talking about looking after the penny and the pounds will look after themselves. It's 35 fucking million walking out the door every single fucking year because of that debt. So I think he is going to be someone that tries to put that right. How he goes about doing that, I really don't know. Then he talks about Ten Hag. And again, is it brutal honesty or is it weak leadership? He says it was the wrong decision, so hands up. He is culpable on that one. You know, rare moment of honesty, I thought that from an owner. Straight up just admitted, probably should have sacked him in the summer, but he hesitated, maybe got caught up in the feelings of winning the trophy. But, you know, they've got that wrong. They acted. They got Dan Ashworth wrong. They acted. Are we going to see the same? Are they going to be that ruthless with Ruben Amorim if things don't improve? Or is he, because he's more like their man, being allowed a little bit more rope? United can't afford another wasted season. Right now, we are hovering between 14th and 16th, right? A little downturn. And it's only the fact that those relegation-threatened teams are so bad that we're not in that mix, because we're right in that mix. Talks about United not being a super club. Explain that we're operating like a mid-table club. Totally agree. Now, one thing that's interesting, have I got a copy up here? He talked about Soccernomics indirectly. He said, you look at the salary bill for the players that are not available to Ruben, our wage bill ranks around mid-table. We're closer to Nottingham Forest or Everton than City or Liverpool. Nottingham Forest was not the example to use when Nottingham Forest are on the brink of being in a title race. His point stands in a certain degree that Manchester United have not been getting value for money out of the players or on the wages that they've been on. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. And when he says, you know, if you take out the four of the highest earners at City and Liverpool, what sort of position would they be in? It's a valid point. But how are you going to fix it? You know, is it going to be a period of Dorgu-style signings for a few years to almost clear out the club and then rebuild back to that point, or what? That's the bit that I was the most kind of rudderless a little bit on it. Talking about, you know, United being back at the top of football, competing with Europe's best, and now you're talking about Nottingham Forest and Everton. You know, and he did name the players that were mistakes. I thought that was perhaps a mistake, was naming players that are still on the books at the club, Casemiro and that, calling them mistakes. That might be awkward eye contact that comes up. But I thought that was a bit of a strange one. Now he goes on to talk about the stadium and the training ground. As I'm doing this now, there's an announcement just gone live in terms of the stadium announcement. So I'm going to wrap this up in a couple of minutes and I'm going to go look at that. And I'll be back within a couple of hours with a reaction to what's going on with the stadium. But what we know yesterday was that he was saying he wanted to build the world's most iconic football stadium, best in class. You know, he was talking a lot about that. The one thing that, I mean, this is where I think Gary knows the answer to this. And obviously they might have given us the answer to this. I know they want to make it 100,000. My phone is going off behind us and I can see some of the alerts that are coming up in it. I know they want to make it 100,000. How are they going to pay for this? When you're talking about cutting this, that and the other out of the clubs, how are you going to pay for this? I love that Gary pushed back and said, why have you not got Harry and Bruno to go and do a dinner and cover that 40 grand? Why didn't you go and ask the players for £1,000 each? They'd have covered that. And the fact that he said no. Do you know what? It's both good and bad. He went, nobody suggested that to me. That's bad. But the fact that in the middle of an interview, he was like, we'll look into that. I like that. I thought Jim Ratcliffe came across quite well, to be honest. As well as can be expected. Now, there's obviously issues. Like, he lied on the interview. And this was the one thing that I think I saw my arse with. When he was talking about it was only 500 tickets or something like that had gone up to the £66. And they were discounted tickets and blah, blah, blah. No, they weren't. You're either misinformed or you're lying, because there were tickets in my section of the ground. My tickets are £41, right? So if people had returned tickets on the same row that I'm on and they got resold, they should be resold at £41. That would be the face value of them. You resold them £25 higher at £66, right? Don't act like you was selling £66 tickets. Stretford End tickets are £41, and they might be £38 on the lower tier. But where I sit, they're £41, right? That was a lie, or it was misinformed. Because I think, like, Gary Neville touched on this at one point, you wouldn't expect him to be over every single micromanagement little tool like that. He's big picture. He is. Yeah, I like Ruben Amorim. After him, Barada and Jason Wilcox have all come to the conclusion and all that sort of stuff. But, it's ambitious. He obviously wants to fix recruitment. He's obviously put his own money into the club. The stadium plan sounds huge. I'm going to get into that in a second. But there were red flags there as well. The Glazers are still here, still rinsing the fucking club. I think he's got a plan to fuck them off. He didn't promise a big transfer spend in the summer. I don't know if I'd say he sounded hesitant or maybe it was guarded. But for me, the interview shows that he knows what the problems are. We all know what the problems are. But actually having an owner that's come on and acknowledged what the problems are is a step in the right direction. I think the fact that he's come on and done an interview in the circumstances we find ourselves in already separates him from the Glazers. Because they've just completely stonewalled us and refused to engage. So I think it's a net positive. But he's got to start getting some decisions right. And it starts with recruitment because that's the most impactful thing. Hopefully they get that right this summer. I still don't anticipate a big spend. They're chopping the expenses ruthlessly. That doesn't align with, to me, that they're also then going to be able to spend fucking $2 billion on a stadium. But anyway, cheers for tuning in. If you haven't already, check out part 2 of Fixing United. I released that last night if you want to go and watch it. It's quite in-depth and it talks about Ruben Amorim and the system and all that sort of stuff. Part 3 probably drop tomorrow now. But either way, cheers for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe. I'll be back in a couple of hours doing a stadium reaction, or I might just do it with Ronaldo in XG Files. See you in a bit.